and welcome to Hockey Zone. I'm Peter Smith, and Mick, my long-lost brother, is joining us to talk about the BWHA competition for season 2018. So first of all, we had a word with the coaches before the season, and this is what they had to say to us.
Yeah, we certainly did, Peter. We caught up with Steve Lancaster with Redcliffe Club that this year are bringing the Div 1 team to Redcliffe for the first time in a few years. And Steve was saying there's a buzz around the Redcliffe Club at the moment. They've got some good income young juniors coming through. In about 3 to 5 years, he expects the juniors to be up in the ranks. And by having a fairly good in-depth Div 2 team, he's got some feeders for the season of the blanks of where the representatives are coming from. So Steve's very happy there. Couple of big things there, 2 imports coming across. Jade Emblem, from Ascot came across, and the first 2 weeks it's going to be very important for Jade to lead that younger Redcliffe team, Steve's saying.
You're going to be in trouble if you keep calling him Marana Ascot, you know that, don't you?
I know. The pre-season started, Redcliffe got fairly serious this year, back in November 2017, where they got together. They knew they were trying to get a Div 1 team in, and they had a bit of a camp up at the Sunshine Coast, so they really started to knuckle themselves down. An interesting point with Redcliffe this year, Peter, is a lot of regional players are actually playing for the Div 1 team. So if we look at the representatives, which the 18 girls will be away the first game, Redcliffe less 9 players. So big hole to fill. A lot of nerves, I think, to come through with the first Div 1 games, but we'll see how they go.
Well, QUT this year, new coach, long-time hockey tragic Greg Rendell, wasn't able to get into contact with Greg, but QUT, typical university side, you're never sure what team turns up on the day, let alone the season. But QUT, bottom of the ladder last year, bottom of the ladder the year before, they will struggle all year.
Yeah, interesting. Greg Riddell made the change from Valleys to QUT.
Well, speaking of Valleys, Clement Omni is now there. Now, Clement, if I've pronounced your surname incorrectly, please correct me when you see me out at the ground. But Valleys, they haven't got any new players this year, apparently. They've retained some of their marquee players, but what they're trying to do is build a young team over the next 3 years. So that's Clement's goal, building the Valleys Div 1 side over the next 3 years. They're happy to, he's sort of the Taoism of hockey coaching, in that he's just going to see how things go for the first 4 weeks, and then he'll see if he needs to make any big changes. And then we come to Norse. Darren Smith, now the coach. I had a bit of a conversation by email with Darren. He said there's no new players of note coming to the club. A bit disappointing. He does say that they're working on their younger players to come through, as every club does. And they still have at the back Emily Burrows, the wall. And Emily, long-time scorcher, played for the Gillaroos, probably the best hockey goalie never to play for the Hockey Roos. She's going to be a big asset to Norse all through the season.
Did Darren promise not to wear the shorts that he wears throughout the season?
He didn't mention the shorts, but we'll have to keep an eye on that, I think.
On him. Yep.
So the goals for the season is, actually his goal is to be premiers. It's going to be a hard task, but I think that having lost 4 Div 1 players at the beginning of the season, they've lost Lucy Balfour and Mickey Trussinger, 2 of the big names. They're big losses. Jade, and also Trish Hughes, one of their long-term strong players they've had for years. She's pregnant. So 4 players is a big loss for Norse. We'll see how they go for the rest of the season.
Yeah, interesting there too. If you look at the way Norse finished the year, they finished it very strong last year, and Damien Shirley obviously had told the girls he was stepping aside, and I think you find that, you know, a change at times is good, but I always spoke to Damien and he always said he was working on a 4-year term with the girls. So interesting to see how they go. I think he's left them in a very good state, and I think they'll be very competitive this year, Pete.
And Katherine?
Yeah, Katherine caught up with Nikki Taylor. So Nikki's is the coach of the Kedron 1 Div 1 ladies, but also has been named the Queensland Under-21s coach this year as well. So that's a good thing for Nikki, and well done, Nikki. So just went through a couple of questions with Nikki as well, and just on the off season to see if they got any real big recruits. And the main thing came out of it is they picked up 2 younger players, which is very exciting for Katherine. But the biggest thing is you find that Jody Kenny's back in the backbone there. So, you know, when you've got an excellent elite player like Jody leading the way in the backbone, you've got a couple of young players up in the front. It's going to be very interesting, and you should see some very exciting hockey from Katherine this year. Just with a couple of things that Katherine do a little bit different to some clubs. They have a lot of inner-house trials, so they use themselves to bounce off each other to select the teams, and their main training started in 20th of January. So the girls haven't been going that long, but it'd be interesting to see how they go. They went very well out here at Tiger Turf.
Won it 6 times in a row, I think.
Absolutely, they do every year, and Nikki's hoping that they be competitive, and what she's asking the girls this year is to be consistent, have very good preparation, to control the nerves, but to maintain momentum over the series. And they think that having a 10-team comp, that's going to give them a better opportunity this year, because you're not getting those buys. The girls are actually getting into a fairly good rhythm. So interesting there.
So St Andrews, the coach this year is Steve Scott. Sharon Simpson, long-term coach of the St Andrews club, has stepped aside. Steve has been around for quite some time at Saints. Now he's taken over the mantle of Div 1 coach. Wasn't able to get a lot of information out of Steve, but I know that Saints, they've got a lot of young players who are just a year or two out of J's. They will be a good young team. We're expecting them to once again make the final 5, and they'll be tough to beat by any club in the competition.
Yeah, don't underestimate them, because they've got some great players. Lily Collier at the back there. You've got Ashley McBurney, you know, representing Queensland in under-18s last year, now slightly a bit older. So yeah, they've got some good little young leaders there that can actually pull this team together, Pete.
Yeah, and the Yiribiri sisters as well. So that moves us on to university.
Yeah, I wasn't able to catch up with Matthew Bradley. It was we've got a bit crossed there, but that's okay. I was able to get a little bit of insight from a few other people, which I'm not going to give my names away, but not a lot of changes. I think there's 2 extra new people this year across to university. So they have a fairly tight-knit group of girls or ladies there that are coming on very well. If you had been out at Tiger Cup, you would have seen that university came out firing, and they really looked good. They looked fit and they looked strong, which is great to see. University for the first game will have 2 players away, so there's not a lot of change. I see it's quite a consistent start for university, and I see that you know, that they're going to step up straight away from the start. Obviously, they're going to want the win straight up and keep the season running fairly quickly.
Well, that brings us to East, and East new coach this year, Donna Ford, and I had a little bit of a conversation with Donna, and of course East, very strong club, always have been, lots of good juniors coming through, and it's no change this year. Gabby Nichols and Lee Thomas will be out of the Div 1 side, but they've got some good players coming through and coming up. Ruby Harris has been promoted up from Div 2, and we know how good she is, having seen her play on so many Friday nights and in Div 1 games last year. Lindsay Howard, and a quick hello to Barbara Leck and Lindsay's mum, who lives in Millstone, New Jersey. Hello, Barbara.
Hello, Barbara.
Lindsay Howard's back playing Div 1 this year, and of course, you can't go past Morgan Matheson, the Ferguson sisters, Genevieve and Alicia, and of course Layla Ellison, all good young players.
Yeah, I think you missed the Smith girls there too, but maybe because of the last name. But
we don't like to brag, Mick.
I tell you that we don't. But Lindsay Howard coming back, I tell you, that is a massive leap forward for East. That lady controls that centre of that hockey field so well with those younger players. I think that's a very positive step forward for East this year.
And that's what we were talking about. We know that Katherine have lost Jess Watson, who really was the centre half for the Katherine side. Yep. Having Lindsay Howard back for East makes East so much harder to beat.
Absolutely. I think it's a positive step.
But you got on to the Ascot coach?
Yeah, a couple of big changes at Ascot. So I got on to the new coach of Ascot for 2018 is Angie Lambert. So Smiley's decided to take a step down for the moment. I noticed that he's actually one of the managers, or the number 2 coach for the Queensland under-18 girls that are leaving to go to Tasmania. So I caught up with Ange, and a couple of things that Ange had to say was that they lost around 3 players. 2 went to Redcliffe, and they've gained a couple of young players as well, so which is very good. A sad part about it is that the big news is Kezia Lemon hasn't made a decision yet if she's coming back or not.
Wow.
And that's a massive loss, not just for Ascot, but actually for our sport.
Well, that's right, and you know that Audrey, my daughter, has stopped playing hockey because of work. Kezia Lemon, she's working as well, and she's been playing rugby league and selected for the Queensland side and the Australian side. So yeah, Kezia has a decision to make about what sport she'll go to.
Yeah, I just hope that she gets the opportunity to come back at a stage where it suits herself and her lifestyle. But getting on with Angie saying that the team's coming together quite well. They've been training together. A couple of things this year is the challenges and the new ideas brought to the club. So they want to go somewhere a little bit different in the idea way. So I'm not quite sure what happens there. But with the Ascot first game, you'll find that I think they only have one player away in the under-18. So they're a tight-knit group of players that they've got. Should see them off to a fairly good start. So the other thing, sorry Pete, just before we go, is just also talking to Ange, is Ange with Ascot have a very tight relationship with Arana Ascot. Now Arana Ascot is the feeder for Ascot, and Arana Ascot this year actually are going to fulfil a JT1 team. So you can see the building up there. The two clubs hopefully at some stage will be feeding off each other, and that's why I get confused, because Arana Ascot feed Ascot. Well, that's what I'm going to say for this year anyway, and we'll leave it at that. So we've got good times ahead. It'll be interesting for Ascot to see how they go.
So moving on, commercial.
Commercial.
You spoke to them?
Yeah, good old Paul Sharp returns as coach. He must be a hard coach, this guy. I spoke to him and I asked him, Paul, how many players did you lose? And he tells me 2.5. I'm not quite sure he could lose 2.5, but guess what? Ebony's pregnant, Paul's wife, so she's due to have their second child in around the 1st of April. So he believes that she's going to be back on the paddock for the last half of the season, and that's the half. So you're a hard taskmaster, Paul, and Ebony, I wish you all the best, and I hope things go well with the actual the birth that's coming up. The commercial team hasn't had a lot of changes, but I will say this, the first game that commercial have, 10 players out. 6 to representatives under 18s, 4 to a wedding. And what that tells me is that commercial have a very good culture in their club, because they seem to be fairly close-knit and they seem to support each other. And interesting enough, Paul's not too worried because he believes he's got the depth and he's got the belief in the lower divisions to fill those spots. So we'll see how we go. Gives us a couple of weeks of bit of rough water ahead, I would think, with picking the scores and that. But Paul's ready to go, and the coaches and the I shouldn't say coaches, sorry, and the team are itching to start.